Ladies, gentlemen, and the often forgotten, but not by me, Lister Storms, welcome to the channel and welcome to episode 4 of our series that is dedicated to helping you become a better driver. Today we're going to talk about the almighty traction circle. We'll start out covering the basis for those of you who have, by a miracle, not seen this thing yet. It's a circle, and its circumference represents the limits of a car's traction. Anywhere outside the circle is basically representing a loss of grip or spinning the tires, locking them up under braking, etc. In this example, the top of the circle represents total amount of traction available when accelerating, the bottom when braking. This is longitudinal grip. Of course, the left and right represent the amount of grip available during turning. This is lateral grip. The traction circle is an imperfect representation of what can happen with the car's tires. Keep in mind there are a lot of other factors that can affect grip levels. Moreover, as we can see in this handy traction graph that we can get in Motec, the amount of grip isn't perfectly symmetrical, especially the longitudinal grip. Despite the simplicity of the concept behind a traction circle, it is one of those fundamental things that you have to know to really improve your racing technique. So let's say we're braking heavy into a turn and using 80% of available grip. The graph will look something like this. If we turn the wheel into a big sweeping turn and use 80% of cornering grip, it will look like this. However, if you try to execute both of those things at the same time, our good friend Pythagoras tells us that you will quickly be using more grip than is actually available. At this point, the wheels spin, in this case probably the rears, and your car will tumble diffuser first into a tire barrier. Newer drivers tend to address this problem by doing all of their braking when turning in. Now, while not ideal, this is at least display a knowledge of the traction circle. Unfortunately, it's not fast. We need to brake, as we learned in the last episode, as late as possible to carry as much of that speed through the middle of the turn and crucially accelerate as soon as possible on turn exit. Now, because you watched episode 3 of the series, you know that bleeding off the brakes while increasing steering input is the key to getting that smooth turn entry. When you've perfected that balance and you know just how to shift the weight of the car and to match the inputs with each other, when you look at your telemetry, your traction circle will look a little bit like this. A G-force meter is its own sort of traction circle and is actually available as an app on most phones, so even if you're a budget racer tackling HPD events, you can still get some rudimentary data to analyze. For example, if we take a turn and we hit 1.2 Gs, we know the car, at least with other parameters like road surface, weather, etc. being similar, is capable of cornering at 1.2. If we only generate 0.8 2 laps later, we know we're not utilizing all the traction available. If you're really on a budget, delivering tofu is an easy way to get real-time data on lateral and longitudinal forces acting on the chassis. Let's talk a little more about how a traction circle is a misleading title. This image is pulled from the excellent telemetry analysis tool Motec, which is available free of use on their website, link in the description. As you can see, it's not a circle. There are not equal amounts of grip available when we compare cornering versus accelerating and braking, and that's because tires are rubber. That's kind of a no-brainer statement, but it's important to remember that everything happening between the car and the track is communicated through 4 small contact patches of rubber. The elasticity of a rubber tire doesn't really come into play as much when accelerating or braking because, well, it's designed to roll. However, when cornering, we can really see a tire deforming and making full use of its available adhesion. This won't be true of every car, but a lot of cars, especially race cars, are capable of generating more Gs in cornering than they are under braking. However, we know that we have to corner and brake at the same time if we want to be proper quick. So let's take a look at some telemetry and see what sort of G-forces we have when we're cornering and braking at the same time. In this first picture, all the negative values on the y-axis represent increased brake pressure. and all the negative values on the x-axis would indicate cornering G's. Predictably, as we've already learned, the car cannot maintain 2.6 G's of longitudinal force under braking and also turn at 2 G's while cornering. This is why we have a smooth release of the brakes as we increase steering input. But to revisit what Jackie Stewart was talking about with the importance of the last 10% of your braking, we can look at this graph. Again, we have some points that are plotted around, I think 90% throttle, some that are around 50%, and then we have neutral throttle. And the really interesting part is all the points that are plotted between negative 0.2 and negative 0.4 G's under braking. It's subtle, but we can actually see that we can generate more cornering G's with just that small amount of braking, that last 10%. And that's because under braking, even a small amount, we are still keeping that weight shifted forward onto the front tires, which is giving us more grip. In addition, because we're losing a little grip on the rear tires, we can actually get them to slip just a bit and get the car to rotate better around the corner. There's another YouTuber who has a way better example of this than me named Groove Slick. I'll put a link in the description down below, but he has an excellent explanation of why trail braking is so important. I really think you should go watch that video. If you find yourself consistently a few tenths slower than the really fast guys in every turn, this is probably where you're losing that time. The traction circle is a very simple tool, but it does a great job of communicating the fundamental idea of using all the grip that we can to go faster. You ignore it at your own loss. In future episodes, we'll be revisiting this pretty consistently, but our next episode is going to go into details about how to practice more efficiently. Until then, see you on the track.